All right, we're gonna go ahead and get started. Amy, will you need to share your screen at all?
Nope.
Okay, sounds good. Hi, everybody. My name is Kara Schweitzer. Today wraps up our CTE month webinars. Today we're talking to the Assistant Division Director for the Division of College Career and Student Success, Amy Miller, and also an administrator at the Madison School District, Adam Shaw. They're going to be talking to us today about recruiting and retaining teachers. So I'm going to go ahead and let Amy take it away. Thank you.
Thank you, Kara. Yes, just real quick, give you a little background on Adam and myself. So as Kara said, my name is Amy Miller. I'm Assistant Director of Career and Technical Education, primarily working with the K-12 CTE programs in all of the high schools that we have. And a little bit of history. I started out as a FACS teacher, then went into about 10 years and as a CTE administrator, hiring lots of teachers and walking that road throughout that stint in my career. And then for the last 4 years, I've worked with DOE. So worked closely with the certification office and the pathways that we have to help get people into our CTE classrooms. So Adam, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Sure, Adam Shaw, high school principal here in Madison. I've been here now, I think this is my 11th year. I've been an administrator for 18. I've been a superintendent, an elementary principal, a high school principal. So I've kind of seen all levels. I've truly enjoyed my 11 years here. It's been challenging. Just as the scope of CTE has changed over the last number of years. And I think you'll see that come out as we discuss some of this today. So
Adam and I are kind of gonna dual interview each other here, just kind of bounce some questions off of each other. So Adam, I think just to lay the groundwork, if you're just jumping on this call, anyone's welcome, but we're really gearing this call towards principals, administrators that are working with those CTE programs. That kind of is an uncharted territory for most. We all know that those building administrators wear a lot of hats and have a lot of responsibilities, and many didn't come with a CTE background. So Adam, what advice would you give that, especially a new principal or one going into a school where they have to manage CTE for the first time, they don't have a director over that? What advice would you give them?
You know, that's a really good question because my degree is actually LEd. So when I got to Madison, you know, when I came from Marion to Madison, we had an ag program and a FACS program down in Marion, and you know, I had 2 CTE teachers. So when I got to Madison, we had quite a few programs going, and I think, you know, the biggest piece was, you know, just learning about all the programs that we have, and then how do we, you know, actively push these programs and make them stronger and engage them and, you know, build those partnerships in our communities and things like that. So but I think the biggest piece is just getting out of your office and getting into those classrooms so you understand what those programs are doing.
Wonderful. And we may add to each other's questions a little bit. I also think it's important to recognize that is someplace that as a principal you need to be involved in, right? Like you need to make sure those partnerships are happening. You need to make sure those programs are current, not just ignoring them, and making sure that, you know, the same demands you would put on your core content areas, you're placing those high expectations on your CTE programs and not just kind of allowing them to exist over there on the side of everything else. So
yeah, I would totally agree with that. I go back to when we do professional development, you know, when we run our early outs, we make sure that we allot our time for our CTE teachers. They get a chunk of time when we get together, and when the social studies group goes off, our CTE content comes together and they work on data and all those other things that are important to their programs as well. So you really got to invest into their programs and let them kind of lead the charge. So.
all right, great. So the one challenge that we hear over and over again a lot, gets a lot of attention, is the shortage of all teachers. But in CTE, we're experiencing that very strongly, especially where our workforce has been the last couple of years. So kind of walk us through the process of how you recruit teachers when you have a CTE opening and kind of how you approach that when you do have that need.
Yeah, it's usually nerve wracking when I have openings at the CT field. Is, there are not a ton of CTE teachers out there, so a lot of my time I spend actively trying to recruit. Not that I'm recruiting from other districts by any means, but I spend a lot of time cold calling people, people I know that maybe they know somebody that's looking for jobs. Um, I call the universities, trying to keep track of who's in programs. Um, I rely heavily on our staffs. Sometimes we've had student teachers in the building and they still keep in contact with those former student teachers that maybe they have a contact. So, it's not just to post an advertisement on the ASBSD and hope that somebody just applies. I mean, we obviously put our posting out there, but there's a lot of groundwork that goes in behind the scenes to make sure that we find that person that matches what we need and our kids need to sustain our programs.
Yeah, that's a great point. You have to kind of go where the people are, right? And
Yeah.
that person you're trying to entice out of industry that's got all that knowledge, they don't even know that ASBSD teacher page exists, and yet so those aren't going to get to them. That's a really good point.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, so here's my question back to you. Okay, so if I'm out and I do go actively find somebody in the business field and I get them to come work for us and I want to hire that person, what's that process for us going to look like?
Right. So that also has its challenges. So very first thing that a banner that I carry all the time and a message that I like to get out is lean on us. The CTE office is here to support you. We've been through that a lot. We have a person in our office. Her name is Jane Gubrud, and she is our guru on all things alternative certification. And if you've been following the session, there's lots of talk about this, and we have lots of pathways to help somebody bridge that gap from industry out. There may be some urban legends out there that's really hard and a really complex process. But if you, before you make that offer, you have a conversation with us and we can look at that person's history, talk with you about what it's going to take, then I think you can make a really fair offer and say, we'd like to hire you in the next 2 years. These are your steps, and we can walk through that. Also know it right away if it's just not too far of a reach. Like if their work experience isn't going to line up with the cluster, you want to know that before you hire somebody in down the road that's not going to work out. We don't run into that very often. Usually by the time you find somebody, they're a pretty good fit, and we're happy to help that. But then once that's made and you have this person in your classroom, then what? They don't have any teaching experience. They don't have some of those tools that you need. And I think that's where, as a principal, you can come in a lot and help support them to keep them there and give them the tools best possible. Someone in the building to kind of foster them through is great, but I can't say enough good things about the teacher mentorship program managed through the state, and making sure that they have somebody that's in their field. And it's easy to say, like, yeah, I match them with the gal down the hall. In most of our schools, the person down the hall doesn't teach ag or doesn't teach health science. And so how that class is structured is going to be very different from how your social studies class is structured, and knowing what they do. So if we can get a match with another health science teacher in a neighboring district or someone throughout the state that we recommend that's really kind of got this down, that's going to give them such a strong get-go from the beginning. We also have a tremendous network in our CT area of teachers in general. So getting them involved in conference. If you hire them in May, make that suggestion that they attend the CTE conference the end of July. And then they're already going to know people when they start that first year. And that, when they have a hard day or they have a lesson that doesn't go right, they already have some colleagues that they can reach out to and start to ask those questions of.
And not only that, they may find their own, coach at that point too. If you get them to summer conference, that summer conference is really, really vital for new teachers. It's extremely important. And I think I'll echo Amy's sentiment in the state mentoring program, because it is a great tool for our teachers. You know, especially those that come out of industry into education, you know, classroom management. They don't understand how to manage a classroom, you know, how to run a budget, you know, all the internal things that, you know, make things run, they don't understand. So that's really where, as an administrator, you spend a lot of your time just coaching and helping and keeping them on track. You know, the content piece, they're superior in content. You know, they know exactly what they're doing. My job is to make sure that we get them from point A to point B and we can transfer the learning to the kids. So, you know, it's just, we got to make sure that we supply them with what they need and get them the right equipment. And how do we use a budget and stay within a budget, and, you know, all those important things. That's what falls on me as the leader. But I think without that coaching piece and without that mentor, they're lost. They got to have somebody to work with. It's vitally important.
And I would guess all of those pieces that you're talking about, the coaching, the equipment, the support, all of that ties heavily into your retention rate. Like,
Very
and
much.
can you talk a little bit about what you've experienced in retention and turnover?
Yeah, you know, we've been pretty fortunate, you know, retention wise. I've gone through a couple of ag instructors. One, because we moved, you know, when I got here, I moved our ag instructor into running our CTE department, the whole operation. But then I also, you know, have, you know, hired some people that have left and gone to industry. Instead of taking them out of industry back to us, they left us and went to industry. I'm fortunate now I've got a instructor that's very, very good. But, you know, we run so many different programs in our ag field. You know, we're running welding and auto mechanics and small engines and all these different things. Trying to find that one teacher that fits that mold it's hard. And you know, you really got to spend your time working with them and connecting them with people. And, you know, we're fortunate that we have tons of industry around us that I can partner those teachers with in our community to build some partnerships so we can get our kids off campus to get them into those fields so that they can actually experience some of those things in a business setting. But I do think the biggest piece for retention is just, you got to get them to buy into your culture, and you got to get them to, you know, build relationships with kids, and, you know, build relationships with their colleagues, and they just need to be a part of your culture, and you got to check on them, and you got to make sure they're okay, and you got to support them.
I think one of the things that I've seen maybe where I would give some advice to administrators on turnover is it shouldn't change. Your expectations for your program shouldn't change on your staff if you're staffing the same cluster. Obviously, if it changes in a cluster, but hold your expectations high for, you know, we expect you to teach these classes to these standards, to have these CTSOs, to do these things. And too often I see that, oh yeah, this one really liked welding, so we did a lot of welding, and then that person left and now we do all animal science. And it isn't driven by the industry needs. It isn't driven by student interest. And there isn't this expectation. I've seen CTSOs start and die and start back up, all hinge on a teacher. And you wouldn't let a basketball coach get away with that. You wouldn't let somebody say, oh, you don't have to coach full-fledged, you know, because it's not your passion. You're going to hire someone that's passionate about that and willing to do what you expect as a district.
Yep, and I think you got to work with them too. I think you got to, you know, if they're extremely uncomfortable, then let's just take baby steps, and, you know, let's just introduce it. And then the next year we're going to add a little more, and but I think the end game is we're going to get back to where we were, but we're going to do it in incremental steps. And I think that's probably what's most important. But, you know, sometimes you got to have those tough conversations with people, and, you know, sometimes they're uncomfortable, and yeah, I get it, but we have to do what's best for kids, and we have to do what's best for their future. And we're got to work within the boundaries of what industry needs. That's what the whole purpose of career tech ed is. So.
Yeah. And when we talk about that replacement, I think we've seen it the last couple of years, and we're going to see more of it, is these legacy teachers. This program in this rural district that's hinged on this fabulous teacher for the last 25 years. That person's ready to move on. And now they're coming in, and the principal's like, I don't know. That's what Sam always did. And so I didn't worry about what Sam did because Sam had it well taken care of. How do you support and the expectations? I've seen so many new teachers fail when they walk into some big shoes to fill because, you know, we won all these great awards and we did all these fabulous things under Sam's leadership. How do you nurture that new teacher that's coming in to fill some legacy shoes?
You know, that falls back on me as the leader. And I better know what that program consists of and how it's run so that I can help coach the new instructor. But I also, change is okay. There's nothing wrong with change. And sometimes you got to bring some new ideas in too. And you know, I get that they're legacy teachers and I love our legacy instructors. I've got some in the building and they're very, very good and the kids love them, but they need to retire too. They all have that ability and they all want to, you know, move on in life. And I don't blame them one bit. But we also need to give these young, you know, teachers coming out a chance, and we got to, you know, buy into what they do and we've got to support them. But me as the leader, I need to know what's going on in those programs so that I can step in and help coach from my side of it when they come into those legacy-based programs. Because that legacy piece, it's there, the culture's there, that will all continue. It's just, we got to get them from point A to point B.
Perfect.
Yeah.
You got any questions for me? I feel like I've left
So how do CTSOs affect teacher hiring and support?
No, I think this differs from every CTSO that we have. So we have 6 state recognized career and technical organizations, FFA, FCCLA, FBLA. They've been around for a long time, and a lot of schools have very strong support on those. But then you're going to have new ones coming out of the woodwork that maybe you haven't experienced before. HOSA, Educators Rising, both of those are growing so fast. And so I think it's important to be open to best opportunities for your kids, but also to recognize that everyone's experience with that is different. Some have not had any experience. Some, it's the whole reason they became a teacher, and supporting them in that journey, but also bringing them into that history of what your district does. Like, are there major things that organization has done in your community that are traditions that are important to keep? Or are there traditions that are important to let go? Maybe something that's become outdated, but it always just happened because this teacher always did it. And it was kind of a tradition that they didn't want to break, but maybe it's a little outdated and then it's time to go. But there's champions of those CTSOs that have been in your community for those long-standing ones, but there's also maybe champions that want to help something get started. So helping that person get in touch with those people so that they've got the people to depend on for judges and those supportive parents and business owners so that they don't feel like they have to do everything by themselves from the beginning.
So I'm going to piggyback off of that. So as an administrator, how can I best support our CTE programs through the use of Perkins funds?
So I would say that's one of the areas that a lot of the principals I work with just don't understand. And they don't think of that as their money. And I think that you need to understand that Perkins are limited funds, but they're very valuable funds. And they're meant to bridge that gap between what normal classroom costs would be and the extraordinary costs of the equipment and the specialized things that CTE has and the professional development, the travel that those teachers need. We want our teachers to be on the top trend of industry, and we understand that doesn't come cheap. That's where Perkins is there to help. But too often I see consortiums, especially where these requests all get sent to a consortium director and then they have to sort it out. And maybe the principal didn't get a chance or didn't take the time to look at those requests before they went in. And some of them are extraordinary cost items for something that's really low value. And if you had $3,000, $5,000, $10,000 at your disposal, is that the item that you would want your district? Or is the program that you think has the highest need getting the most attention? So don't just be submissive and letting those requests go off without your oversight of them. Make sure that those teachers have at least ran those requests by you and that you agree that these are the highest needs for your school district. And, I know it's not a ton of money for most schools, but it is a valuable resource and we want to protect it and make sure it's used in the most wise way possible.
I completely agree. And I guess I'm a firm believer that, Perkins dollars really needs to be used towards professional development. And that's a great way to get your teachers into, some national conferences and things like that, that maybe your local budget and maybe can't afford to send them to, because it is nice to connect and see what other things are out there in this country, because there are a lot of cool things that are going on that are easily replicated. In small school, big school, it doesn't matter. So.
And I would tag onto the Perkins conversation also with the grant conversations we've been a tremendous time the last 18 months to 2 years. We've given over $6 million in grants during that time. And I don't look for that to continue at that rate, but we will always have competitive grants to support our schools and their programs. But that needs to be something that you're continually in the back of your mind as you have those tough conversations, as you build those wish lists. I can always tell when a grant application was like, oh, it's open. What do we want to do? Or someone had the forethought to wait for that perfect opportunity. They already had the idea and they were ready to pounce on it. And that is not something that I would ever suggest a teacher do on their own. Our grants are complex enough. Most of them have matching funds. Most of them need to tie into a long-term community school district plan. And that administrator really needs to be involved in that grant application.
And I think I would challenge any administrator, teacher, think outside the box. We were fortunate enough, when Governor Dugard started giving money back when, I think it was 13, 14, we were fortunate. We got a large sum of money and we just thought outside the box, and it was, how do we, find ways to connect with our business partners? And I just challenge you to find ways to think outside the box. Think outside your four walls that you're in, because there are plenty of ways to get your kids exposure to CTE besides just putting them in a classroom. And I think that's what's important. Part of the challenge I had when we had to write the grant back, almost 10 years ago now, but we couldn't hire staff. We had to find ways without hiring staff to increase programs, but yet not hire staff. And it was a great challenge. And I truly enjoyed the challenge. But yet we've built sustainable programs that are still here today. So I think it's the challenge of, don't be afraid to take a risk.
Absolutely. And on your school report card, it doesn't release the same time as in the fall, but it comes out late January. If you go all the way to the last tab on the top of that report card, you'll see your CTE stats. That they've been there about 2 years and they sit right along your ESSA data. But you can see some of those important things, like how your graduation rate of your CTE participants varies. But one of the key indicators that means the most to me is the work-based learning numbers. Like, how are you doing as a district getting your students out to those real world experiences in the workplace before they graduate? What kind of connections are they making with your industry partners to really solidify all of this work they've done throughout their CTE career? Are they going out and connecting those dots and making sure before we officially launch them into the world? And statewide, our work-based numbers are fairly solid, but they're way too low for where I'd like them to be. I would like to see a far majority of our kids out there getting those work-based learning numbers. And what we see in most districts is it's kind of all or nothing. Either the district has super high work-based learning numbers or super low. And you can tell that that's where that comes from, that administrative support, that school board. Some schools require them to have it before graduation, that yep, you have to do one of the capstone experiences before you graduate. And that buy-in from those districts really, really shows.
Yeah, and I think that's the other thing I'll echo too is I would encourage any administrator to go to your school board and try to share with them some of the things that you're doing with CTE, because a lot of times I don't think they even know. Um, you know, we are pretty heavy industry, heavy internship. I want our kids out in that field. I want them to experience those things, because I want them to make sure that if that's the path they're really going to go, and if that's really what they want to spend 4 years of college doing and investing that kind of money, I would rather they figure it out while we have them here when it costs them nothing than to have them sink, 2 or 3 years into a college education and realize, oh, that wasn't for me. So.
And one idea that was really drilled into my head as I went through school and worked towards administration was you don't wait till your back's against the wall to sing your praises about your program, right? Like CTE is optional. It's one of the first to be cut. It's hard to justify sometimes. And if you wait until it's budget cut time or bond issue time, it's too late. Your school board needs to know every day how the amazing things that your programs are doing, how your kids are performing, the awards they're winning. Like, make sure that they're most aware. Same as your football team going to the dome, they should know when you have kids winning national awards like that. That's big stuff.
Yeah, I'd be honest with you. If we said we were going to cut CTE programs, I'm pretty sure we would find a way to make money in this community, because I know our parents don't want our CTE programs to go away because they do see the value in them, and so does our board. And so,
Thanks to your branding and messaging,
no,
I'm sure. So,
no, a lot of it has to do with our phenomenal staff that we have. So,
awesome. Let's see, what else do we have left for questions? I guess I don't see any questions in the chat, but if anybody has anything, they're certainly welcome to reach out. Adam, any final thoughts or anything you can think of that we haven't covered?
I think the biggest thing I would encourage administrators, one, is to engage with the South Dakota ACTE. I think it's a vitally important group, especially if you're looking to build CTE programs, or even just looking for that connectivity of groups that do have CTE programs. Come to the summer conference and just experience it once. It's really worth your time. That's how I kind of got into it, and I've truly enjoyed it. I love going to summer conference. It's a great kickoff in August, right before we're going getting back to work. I know that we're extremely busy as administrators in August, but you can carve out 2 days to come out and connect and find ways to network with other administrators that have CTE programs. It's really worth your time. And then the other thing I would say is really buy into it for your teachers. If you can't be there, at least get your teachers, especially your new teachers, to conference. It's really, really important that they're in conference, because that is their lifeline to all the questions that they're going to have, and especially when you're dealing with all the different groups. So.
Great point. At the beginning, we mentioned how important that was to get a new teacher started, but there is an administration division of the conference as well. And the sessions for that session are specifically designed for people like us. That's how Adam and I got to know each other. We've both been a part of that organization for almost our entire careers, but it's nice to go with like-minded people, sit down with other principals and have those conversations about your struggles, your triumphs, best practices, hearing what's happening, what's coming out. It also gives you a pretty direct line to our team. We have all of the CTE team from the Department of Ed there. I don't think there's anybody in that administrative division that doesn't have my cell phone number, a direct line. We talk often, we swap ideas. I know what's happening in their programs. We're able to help celebrate those and kind of pass those stories along. And so it is really a great experience to have.
And I think the other thing is too, it also provides us a connection to go tour other places. I think a lot of times we get so, caught up in what we do that sometimes I enjoy taking a trip up to Watertown and going to see Bert's operation in Watertown, the Northeast Tech. And I like going down to the CTE Academy and, walking around with Josh Hall. I think some of that is important because I can see other things. And it may not be that I'm going to bring it back and I'm going to do that, but at least it gets my mind rolling a little bit to keep, our program on the front end of things as well. So.
So for the administrators that might not be familiar with how the CTE team works, we've got a team of 6 regional specialists that are scattered throughout the state. Hopefully you've met them when they've come to do their school visits. Most of them are happening right now. So make sure that you do get that opportunity. Again, those legacy teachers, it's easy to just say, yep, I'd like you to meet with Mr. Smith, and you go down the hall and I don't need to be there, but that's going to help your transition as well. And you get to know that person. They're your direct line for your questions. But the responsiveness of our team is one of the things that I'm most proud of. And so we're here, emails, phone calls, any questions that you have. Don't feel like you need to navigate this darkness alone. We're here to support you in that and help you get those right people in those right positions.
And I, as an administrator also, I would always be here. You can always email me, call me anytime. I will, if I can't answer it, I'll connect you with somebody that I'm sure can. So.
And like a lot of times somebody will say, I want to see, a really good culinary program that's sensible, right? And I'd say, go look at Adams. Madison Central has a great setup that, they kind of got it divided in a classroom, and then you can walk through these doors, and it's a little restaurant area and a commercial kitchen, but it's really wisely designed. And I think some people know like the big ones, the big names, and these big places that are a little bit scary. But sometimes knowing that like, oh, this happened in a community my size or in my area, we have great connections with programs on the west side of the state, the north corner of the state. We can make a recommendation where, yeah, you should go visit this place. Kara, any other questions for us?
Nope, I don't see anything in the chat, but this was a really great conversation. Thank you both for your time and energy behind this important conversation. And I will remind everybody, if you have any follow-up questions, Amy and Adam are both happy to hear from you. And then also, if you'd like to share this information with anybody, these recordings will be available on our website soon.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, Adam.
Yeah, you bet.
Take
Thank
care.
you.